And
I'm going to introduce the program. You can talk about those.
okay,
Are you prepared to talk about your grievance? Okay.
all right,
And then we'll find a minute to stop for
Yeah.
that too.
okay. 3, 2, 1.
Today is Thursday, April 28th, 2011. And this is the start of an interview with Mr. Lieutenant Colonel Donald Odell at the RSVP offices of Catholic Services of Macomb, located at 26238 Ryan Road, Warren, Michigan. Mr. Odell is 76 and his date of birth is July 25th, 1934. Mr. Odell currently resides at 31810 North River Road, Harrison Township. My name is Dave Brousseau, and I will be the interviewer, and Ann Bartlett will be the videographer. Mr. Odell, would you state for the record the branch of service you served?
United States Air Force.
All right, let's go back. You were born and raised in Pontiac.
Pontiac, Michigan.
Can you start with giving us a little background on your family, and then I'd like to move into where you enlisted and how that came about.
My dad was an employee of General Motors. My mother was a housekeeper, or you might say, housewife. And I had a half brother and a half sister. And I have a brother. My brother, who was 18 months younger than I, he and I are the only one living now today. And I grew up as a normal kid, you know, played baseball, did all that, you know, a lot of hockey, played a lot of hockey, hunted, fished, had a paper route. I think I was to 12 years old when I had my first job, you might say. And after that, I went to, or started into a automotive apprenticeship, and did that for a couple of years, and graduated out of high school and at Pontiac Senior High School in Pontiac, Michigan. And wasn't sure what I wanted to do in life or who I wanted to be, so I joined the Air Force 6 September 1952.
What was going on at that time in the
Well,
world?
the Korean War was just beginning, or I was in during that time, because that ended in 1954, if I remember correctly. And I went into the Air Force and was accepted into the electronics field.
Any anticipation going in, a young kid going into the service where this is shooting for good?
Well, you know, I really didn't have any apprehension about it, especially when I was going to, you know, go into fire control systems. You know, the odds of you being on the front line are probably, you know, whatever the percentage is.
Of course, at that stage, we're going to live forever too. Anyhow,
Oh, yeah,
so.
and the old phraseology that we pilots like to use a lot, it always happens to the other guy, not me. You know what I mean? That's
right.
That fateful day, that's what the first thing I thought of when that chute popped open. It always happens to the other guy.
And you just happen to be the other
I
guy.
am now the other guy.
Well, at this point, you're not in an active combat position, and
No.
you're not a flyer yet. So
No.
there's some interesting things that came about to cause that to transpire. So.
I went to what back then they called the Air Force Electronics School, and graduated from that. And then from there went to Advanced Electronics, which was called E4, 5, and 6 Fire Control Systems, Airborne Fire Control for air-to-air.
Did you have any schooling beyond high school now?
No,
you
no, I
didn't
did
start
not.
into it at all, okay.
But during the entire time I was in the Air Force, 23 years, on and off at different bases, I went to night school. And when I finally got out of the Air Force, I had about 2.5 years accumulated.
What was it like at basic?
Basic training was, yeah, well, it was a little sort of a rude awakening, and I didn't have any problem with it. You just had to know that's just the way the military operated. And, you know, you become regimented, and you do it their way, or you're not going to be there. Period. And, I didn't think it was too bad. It was physically, you know, it was pretty strenuous. They wanted to work you out and make sure that you.
Do you recall how long it was?
It lasted about 3 months, yeah,
Okay.
and if I remember correctly.
Mhm.
And then once I finished the basic, then I went on to electronics school in Denver, Colorado.
Where do you think you got that background from?
Well, I always liked the electrical kind of background. My dad was an electrician, so, you know, we used to build a house and I open wired it. And I guess, you know, that was sort of the stepping stone to my expertise, as you allow me to use it at that kind of age, you know. You know, when I finished high school, I had no idea what, like I say, well, who I wanted to be or what I wanted to do. So,
Probably gonna help you, it did help you later on when
Yeah.
you made the switch.
yes, and
So you came out of basic and you went to electronics, how long was that?
that was, let's see, that was about 18 months I was in
Wow.
school.
And this is all during the Korean conflict?
Yeah. And once I finished that, you know, the typical military way to do business, you know, I asked for Selfridge Air National Guard Base, or back then Selfridge Air Force Base, is my final assignment, you know, to, you know, go into a fighter squadron, because that's what I was, a radar type. And they sent me to Yuma, Arizona. I should have asked for Yuma,
Naturally.
Arizona, they would have
Right,
probably sent me
probably.
to Selfridge, you know, one extreme.
Now, is there a big base there in Yuma?
It was, no, it was a gunnery base where different squadrons came down there to shoot gunnery, rocket, air to air, and that kind of stuff. And it was actually pretty primitive. We even back then we lived in tents. We didn't have.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is middle fifties.
Yeah.
Now, we're all through with the, well, I shouldn't say that. We've moved away from the prop plane now and
Oh yeah.
gotten into the jet. Prop planes were still used in Korea and probably even in Vietnam to some extent for
Yeah, oh, yeah.
certain duty,
Yeah,
but for the most part,
You know, that era was ending.
1950s, 52 was starting to move
Yeah.
it away into
Yeah.
the jet fighters. What made you want to make a change?
Well, I didn't like Yuma, Arizona. I mean, I thought, well, you know, if I could get into pilot training, and I really didn't have that ambition until, I'll never forget his name. Lieutenant Torres was the pilot on the airplane I worked on, did a radar repair on. And I was the radar crew chief for him. And they had a big gunnery shoot-off down there, and he took first place. He won it. So, as sort of a reward, he asked me would I like to go for a ride in a jet fighter. And of course I said, yeah.
Which one did you go in?
I flew in the F-94C, which was a two-seat tandem fighter, air-to-air rocket kind of aircraft. I mean, it fired mainly rockets.
Now, the two-seater, one is the pilot, the other is the real.
Yeah, the
Okay.
radar operator. So I flew in the radar operator seat. After I landed, it was probably the first time in my life I knew what I wanted to do or who I wanted to be. And then I started pursuing getting into pilot training.
Interesting story. Could you tell us about how you got into pilot training?
Yeah, well, when I went to the squadron commander to see about applying for, back then it was called the Air Force Aviation Cadet Pilot Training Program, because there was no Air Force Academy yet. And of course the regulations, and he got them out and said, well, do you have 2 years of college? No. Close the book, that's it. No more conversation here. I mean, he didn't even want to discuss it. So then I asked to go see my group commander, who was in Colonel Jabrera, the ace from Korea. I thought he'd be very sympathetic, you know, and bend over backwards to help me, but he didn't. So then I went to see the wing commander for, you know, me being a two-striper enlisted guy, and he's a full colonel wing commander. I mean, he's almost like God to me, you know. And I went to see him, and he basically, well, you know, theoretically, there's nothing we can do here, you know. You don't have the two-year college as a prerequisite to get into, to go take the pilot test. So I proposed to him, what if I could pass a two-year level college entrance exam? Well, he obviously didn't know the answer, so he got on the phone and called a colonel friend of his who was in charge of the cadet selection team in California. This was a committee that chose who went and who didn't go to pilot training based on scores. And he said that question had never been asked, but he would find out, and eventually he went to Washington, came back, and called his wing commander and told him if he could pass a two-year level college level entrance exam, we'll give him the waiver for the 2 years. So Colonel Williams said, well, let me know when you're ready. And, yes, sir. So
Now, where are you gonna go to get what's gonna be on that test?
the guys that I'm working with in the electronics field down in Yuma, Arizona, a lot of them, you know, were 2-year, 3-year, 4-year, you know, kind of college guys. And they burned the midnight oil with me for about probably close to 6 weeks. And I finally, I reached that point where I was just saturated. I couldn't absorb anything. So I went to see Colonel Williams, and he said, okay, he called over to that other colonel in California and said, okay, we're going to send him to San Bernardino State College and take the test, the 2-year. So they sent me over there. I took the 2-year entrance exam and walked out of there and said, no way, no way did I pass. I mean, you know, it covered such a broad field, you know, and, not having that educational background. But about a week later, you know, I got my squadron commander said, go see Colonel Williams. I went up to his office, and he said, I got good news for you, you passed it.
I'll be darned.
And I said, whoa.
What kind of topics did they cover? Just
Oh, they covered English, math.
okay, so it had nothing to do with your flying or
nothing to do with flying.
electronics?
No, strictly from an educational standpoint.
Boy,
And
how'd you do in school?
I was one of the, when I went to high school, my theory when I went to school, to be honest with you, if C is passing, why do I want to work that hard to get an A? And that's just the way I went. And I picked that curriculum, which was general education, because I had to have money in my pocket when I was a kid. We didn't have a lot of money, and I don't know, for some reason I always had to have money in my pocket, so I checked that. I pursued the career where you went to school a half a day and worked a half a day, and did that during my time in college. Didn't really pursue any particular academic, endeavor of, hey, C is passing, I know.
So basically it was the study time before the
Mhm.
test that probably made the difference for you.
Exactly. And I can remember back when I wrote my school to get my all my paperwork, from high school. I'll never forget it. The principal at that time that I went to there was a gentleman by the name of Mr. Thor. So he sent me my transcripts of my high school, all my courses, and with a letter in there saying, I really respect your desire and your endeavor to accomplish this, but don't put a lot of faith in this. So I did pass it, and then when I got out of pilot training, I went back to pilot. I couldn't wait to go to my high school and see him. And he died like 30 days before I got
Oh
back.
my.
I want to say, to go there and say, see, I told you so.
Yeah.
You can do these kinds
Seems
of things.
like we all have that one person in our life.
Yeah.
See,
Yep, see, I told you so.
give me a sense of what you felt the minute he said you passed.
Oh, I was later, because that was, had become such a, I don't know, a goal for me after I'd flown in that in '94. I mean, I wanted to be a fighter pilot. I mean, that was the only thing I could see on the horizon, you know? That was now my goal.
The 94, that would have been something after the 86?
It was basically the same time as '86, because U-4, 5, and 6
Okay.
fire control systems was the F-86, the F-94, and the F-89,
Okay,
which were still, you know, the D-86 Deagle was not a subsonic, but it would go subsonic, but it became uncontrollable a little bit. And
so subsonic, we're talking 700?
Yeah, far less, well, the sea level would be 672
Okay.
knots, so
So
700 mile an hour.
we're not close yet to the supersonic.
No, but we were in the process of building them, and I don't think the '94 or the '89 would go supersonic either.
Okay.
But we were just short of the F-100s and the F-100 series that became supersonic airplanes. But, you know, at least I had now made that first hurdle, and that was to, you know, get the waiver. Now I gotta go to Parks Air Force Base in California and take all the STAY-9 tests for pilot training.
To your knowledge, was this route that you went common, or was it extraordinarily rare?
Well, extraordinarily rare, because a guy in California said nobody's ever asked that question, okay? Could you take a 2-year college level entrance exam and get a waiver for those 2 years of college that you didn't have? He said that as far as nobody'd ever asked that question. I was the first person that did, apparently, according to this guy.
So we'll leave that answer at rare, extraordinarily rare.
Yeah.
What's the first step now after you leave with knowledge that you're gonna be admitted into the fighter program?
Well, I don't know that yet. I had to go take all those tests for a week in
Okay.
San Francisco. Once I passed those tests, now I know I'm qualified to go into class. Now I'm waiting for a class assignment. And, but when they went through the drill there in the big auditorium, those who qualified for pilot training, when you took those tests, you could either qualify just for OCS, Officers Candidate School. Next level was Navigator School or Pilot Training School. Of course, I qualified for pilot training. And they said it would be an 18-month wait because they had a big backlog in pilot training. And 18 more months in Yuma, Arizona, I don't even know whether I can survive. You know, I hated it.
And what you're saying too is probably the demand was not high
No, well,
for pilots, or
they were
they
short.
were certainly,
They were short on navigators, and you go there right away. But I didn't want to be a navigator, I wanted to be a pilot, that's what I went there for. So I went in the office, and this major was in there, and I said, sir, you know, the officer in there said it'd be 18-month wait to get into pilot training, and I couldn't bear the thought of sitting in Yuma, Arizona, where the wind blew through the tents all the time, and the scorpions, and, you know, it never rained, I mean. And he said, well, there is. I said, well, what is it, or how do I apply? He said, if you'll sign a early release form, means you'll go on a moment's notice if somebody has a death in the family or the individual gets sick and can't make that class, that Aviation Cadet Pilot Training Program class, you'll go at a moment's notice. I said, give me the piece of paper. I signed it. Then I went back to Yuma, Arizona, and within 3, 4, 5 days, go see Colonel Williams. And went to his office, and he said, you got a class assignment, 55S Pilot Training School.
there's gotta be a washout rate
Yeah,
of some kind.
oh yeah. I'm trying to think. I think we started in our pilot training class with, my phone's going off. And I think we started with 200, and we ended up graduating 139. And, finally got your commission as a second lieutenant in your wings. And so there was pretty good attrition rate.
If we go back a second, they were talking about people that were accepted into the class that for one reason or another couldn't attend. This probably included washouts, because I would imagine some of those
Well,
people.
no, that wouldn't, you wouldn't qualify there because they've already accomplished or completed some of that.
Uh-huh,
Okay, and then didn't make the final grades or flying abilities, and, so this was before the class would start, somebody have a death in the family or gets sick and can't make it, that was the only way you got in.
so you get transferred and start,
Start pilot training.
what was that all about?
Well, I went from you went to Lackland Air Force Base.
That's where you were in basic, right?
Yeah, that's,
Okay.
but that was like the basic where it was almost like you went through an OC, Officer's Candidate category, to become an officer. Once you got through that, then you went to primary flying school, which in my case was Kinston, North Carolina. And there about 6 months, and then if you complete that, then you go to basic or advanced. And from there I went on to advanced and became and then I stayed there as an instructor pilot after I graduated.
What kind of planes do you fly?
Well, in the primary school, we flew the PA-18, which was a tandem Piper, but had the bigger engine in it, 110 horse instead of an 85. And I think we put about 20 hours in that. And then once you completed that, and you were successful in it, then you went and flew the T6, the Terrible Texan tandem.
Yeah,
And then when you finished that, you either went to fighters or you went to multi-engine. And because I graduated #1 in my class, my ambition, although I was looking forward to being a fighter pilot, but I was looking beyond that, when that's over, I need the multi-engine experience because the place to go then was the airlines.
Sure.
They made a lot more money than fighter pilots.
sure.
So
And there's a big difference between single and multi.
Absolutely. So I went the multi-engine route, and I'll never forget my instructor. His name was Mr. Healy, and he almost had a stroke when I did that. And he said, "Geez, I could teach a monkey to fly in a right seat of a twin-engine airplane, a multi-engine airplane." He was really upset with me because I graduated top of my class. I had first choice. So I didn't. I had gotten a fighter assignment, then they called us back in and said, "Look, we need some of you fighter guys to volunteer for multi-engine because we don't have enough." So I did that. But eventually, I graduated flying. I went there and flew the B-25, and then about halfway through my tour as an instructor pilot there, the Air Force went to all jet. So then I went over to the T-33 jet trainer, qualified in that, instructed in that for a year and a half, and then went into fighters.
So what period was it that you made the move back to the fighters?
That was probably, I got there, I graduated in 55, so that had to be in 54 when I made that choice to go multi-engine rather than fighters.
Okay,
But then 55, yeah, because I graduated in August or July 31st, 1955. So I was honorably discharged because all during that time I'm considered enlisted. And then I got my commission in my wings and stayed there as an instructor and left there in August of 1958, so I was there a little over 3 years.
so was the threat of our participation in Vietnam's in the area?
No, not then. I was still too early. That really all started maybe, we had a lot of covert operation going part of that, but it really got started in 54, 50, 55, or 64, 65, 1965. In fact, I think the fighter attack against North Vietnam, out of either Thailand or South Vietnam was, I believe, January, February '65.
When were you stationed at Selfridge?
When I went over to Landstuhl, which is really adjacent to Ramstein Air Base there near Kaiserslautern, Germany. I was assigned to the 514th Fighter Interceptor Squadron there. And when my tour ended in June of '62, then I was assigned back to Selfridge to the 94th Fighter Interceptor Squadron, flying the F-106 Delaware, which was Rickenbacker's old squadron, 94
Yeah,
from
yeah.
World War I now. He used to come to the base there occasionally,
Really?
yeah.
Kind of a guy was he?
No, he was just the nicest guy you're gonna meet. I mean, he got up there in age too, you know,
Mhm.
and, but very pleasant individual. And we at Selfridge had gotten a Spad that he flew in World War I in boxes and, you know, and we assembled it and made it flyable. He came there and, our wing commander at the time flew the Spad out of Selfridge.
Yeah, I remember
around
reading
the
about
battery,
that.
yeah.
Yeah. They're working on another one right now too.
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, as soon as we rebuilt it and put it all together, we had to manufacture a lot of the parts, we didn't have them. And then, of course, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base Museum wanted it back, so we had to give it back to them. But after we did all the work and restoring it,
Parts.
parts.
I mean, the whole thing was made out of balsa wood and tissue
Yeah,
paper.
but they had to get we flew all the way to like Oregon to get the right kind of woods.
Right kind of wood,
Yeah, and the fabrics. You
metal
know,
stanchions for the engine.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Some way, I don't remember the story now, but some way we found, somebody donated the engine. Somebody had an engine for that. I don't remember the story now, it's been too long ago.
So now you're at Selfridge, how do you get relocated to go to Vietnam?
Well, as I was coming up on the end of my tour there, I've been there for almost 5 years. But, and again, the Vietnam War was now, you know, it progressed in a pretty heavy stage, and there you had the constant rotation of pilots going over there, and so I got an assignment to 105s, although I had already been hired by TWA as a pilot, but they said they sent me my assignment one day before they got my resignation, which I didn't believe to begin with. But,
Right.
so then I went.
Would you be really ready to get out at that point, or?
Yeah, I was ready to get out. Yeah, and I had enough experience. I got I got hired by TWA.
Needed what you needed, and
Yeah.
how long had you been in?
Let's say I went in '52, and that was let's see, that's 1966. So I had 14 years.
But you couldn't draw retirement pay. at
Oh
that
no,
point.
not done that unless you
Yeah.
finish 20
Wow.
active duty time. But I got my assignment, and I was sent down to McConnell Air Force Base in Wichita, Kansas. Went through the combat crew training for the 105, graduated from there, and then of course received my assignment to the 34th TAC Fighter Squadron, 388th Tactical Fighter Wing at Korat, Thailand. And I came home for 2 weeks before I went there. I went over there.
Now, that's in
67.
northern Thailand,
Yeah.
middle to northern?
Yeah, middle to northern part of Thailand, yeah.
Now, attached then, Thailand is attached to South Korea.
No, Laos.
Okay, Laos.
Laos, and then Vietnam to the right.
Okay,
Yeah, and Cambodia south.
so you're gonna fly out of Thailand and are gonna have as a target North Vietnam,
North
so
Vietnam.
that's quite a stretch.
Yeah, yeah, but we usually crossed Laos up to the north, or if we were going the Gulf of Tonkin route to our target, then we crossed just about the DMZ there between South Vietnam and North Vietnam.
that require refueling?
Oh, yeah, once we took off, because we went with pretty heavy loads, and especially in the summer with the high temperatures, we had to reduce our fuel load to get
Yeah.
airborne, and then as soon as we
Fuel
got.
expands in the
Yeah.
heat and,
Yeah, so as soon as we get in the Gulf of Tonkin, we'd meet up with the tankers and take a full load of fuel. As we go northbound towards,
tell me a little bit about what it's like in the cockpit.
Well, well, one good
Room
thing,
for a
it
big
had a
party
good,
in
it had a
there?
good air conditioner.
Oh,
on the
really?
ground, yeah, which really made it a little more comfortable, because it really got hot and humid there.
Cause all you got is window.
Yeah, you got all that sun shining right through that plexiglass on you. And, you know, and even after I got there, like we were talking a little bit ago, you know, you know there's a certain amount of danger to it, obviously, you know. But like we mentioned, it always happens to the other guy, and you had to fly 100 missions. As soon as you finished your 100 missions, you went home, which normally was roughly around 6-7 months.
Now, home, does that mean temporary R&R, or does that mean you're out?
You're reassigned back to some other base, flying whatever.
Is it likely you would end up back in a combat zone?
You could volunteer to go back again.
So that'd be another tour.
That'd be another tour. We had guys do it.
But if you got reassigned back home, that means you don't have to go back.
No, but you could possibly, if
Okay.
you stayed in long enough, when, you know, when
The need
yeah, the need
certainly
arose, you
dictates,
could
yeah.
be sent back again for another tour.
Another 100 missions?
Yep. Yeah, yeah, but they would have to be hurting pretty bad, you know, pilots, and, you know,
That's
unless
an
you
awful lot of
volunteered.
experience, though, that they're overlooking.
Yeah, but they feel by you coming back, you know, to a squadron here, you've been in the combat arena.
Now you're a good trainer.
You're a good trainer for them, to
Yeah,
what they could
that's-
anticipate if they get duty over there.
We had a vet that was in here several months ago whose duty in Vietnam was exclusive to electronic repair.
Mm-hmm.
And he ended up exclusively working on the ejection system for the pilots. And I've never seen a guy so dedicated to doing the job right and ensuring that every pilot like you had the best opportunities when you had to eject. Now,
Well,
it just was surprising, but
Well, there's no second choice,
That's
chance
right.
there, you know, it's either gonna work the first time you do it.
there are no other
You
options.
probably won't get another chance at it, so. Yeah, I can say my system worked perfectly when I ejected.
Okay, so you're in Karat. What's it like there?
We lived in what we call hooches. I mean, it was a lot of camaraderie. I mean, when you talk about that kind of arena of warfare, you know, here we're flying to North Vietnam, bombing, strafing, whatever we're doing, and then you're coming back to Thailand, and you get out of the airplane and you can go to the officers club, you can go to your hooch. I mean, you're no longer in a war zone, not like guys in South Vietnam.
You're
okay?
quite a ways away from.
Yeah, so you're away from that kind of.
How long is a trip? You get an assignment to go out
Mhm. Usually
3-4 hours?
about 4.5, depending. It's anywhere. I would say anywhere from 3.5 to 4.5.
You're
hours.
sitting in this
Yeah, you're round trip. Yeah.
sweat box.
Although it was plenty cool in the airplane. I was impressed with the airplane. It was
I don't know. It's
a very,
terrible.
very durable airplane. See, most airplanes, a lot of fighters did, even F-4 did, they had fuel in the wings. Well, you take an anti-aircraft shell through there, and next thing you got a fire.
Tell me where the fuel was on this one.
In the 105, it was up, we call the saddleback, up on top of the
Right behind
engine,
your
right
head.
behind my head, yeah, right behind us.
What a comforting thought.
But if that shell or anti-aircraft projectile goes through the engine and causes the fuel problem, you You don't need the fuel anyway, cause
Now,
the
is the
engine's
fuel
over.
sitting on top of the engine?
Mhm.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay.
And of course, in our external fuel tanks, we carry two 450-gallon tanks, one on each wing. So you,
Okay,
yeah, you get a good.
which are disposable
Yeah,
whenever you need
You
to.
can jettison them.
Were you ever confronted by the enemy in the air?
No, we had a couple times where the MiGs came out probably from China, and turned towards us, and, the controller out on the water, the Navy, we had Air Force controllers in 121, and they flew like 200 feet off the water. They could tell when they took off, they could tell us when they took off, when they're landing, where they are, and once they turned toward, then their sole purpose, by the time I got there, if they turn towards us, well, then we gotta jettison our bomb load to protect ourselves, for dogfighting. And as soon as you did that, they turn around and go back to China.
So it's just kind of a nuisance.
Yeah, exactly. Once in a while they'd get in there, but I never had any close to me or.
How did your 105 rate with the latest MiG?
The 105 was not nearly as, well, there was 18 MiG shot down by 105s. But let's say probably compared to 40, 50 by F4s. F4 was a much more maneuverable airplane than
Okay.
105.
But you had
Yeah.
a dual purpose too. Yours was a bomber as well as a air-to-air.
But we had the Gatling gun, which the F4 didn't. A lot of times they get too close to the MiG, and there's not
Yeah,
enough time
anything.
for the missile to arm once
Right.
it leaves the airplane. The newer models, just before the war ended, they put the Gatling gun in the F4. But like I say, for what the 105 was doing, that was originally designed to be a nuclear weapon carrier. It was a very stable gun platform, bombing platform. I mean, it was a stable airplane, very good. It could take a beating, and you still get home with it. But back then, typical with our method and means of designing, we had multiple hydraulic lines, systems. You had a primary, you had a secondary, you had a backup. Unfortunately, they run the lines all right next to each other. So if you take
Take
a
a
hit,
shell in one.
one shell goes through, takes them all out. So then later, after Vietnam, they started separating them, so they were close proximity.
So you got 100 missions,
Yeah,
and that seemed like kind of an insurmountable number.
it is a big number.
When you think about it, are you going to be going out every day or every other day?
Basically every day, and then every 3 weeks you would go R&R. I mean, wherever you wanted to go, we could go back to the Philippines or Bangkok or in Thailand or Saigon or wherever we had airplanes going and coming from, you could hop those airplanes.
Tankers or,
Yeah, whatever,
Cargo
cargo,
or-
C-130s.
yeah,
Yep. And then, so you had a week off and then you came back. We would prefer, to, if we could, fly 2 missions a day. You get to the 100 quicker, obviously.
yeah.
But normally they would only allow you one a day, especially up in the high threat around Hanoi, the capital. We call PAC 6 area. They had PAC 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 was the bad one. And
Did you ever experience any resentment because you didn't have a college background at that time?
not at all, never,
I
ever,
don't think that was,
no. As long as
I mean,
you.
today it would be more difficult because everybody goes to college, but then
Exactly.
not everybody
Back
was,
then,
going that
it was a
route.
different.
was new.
Yeah, then they built the Air Force Academy, so, that's 4 years
Yeah,
there.
that's a place to go.
Yeah,
And then a commitment added on to the back of that.
oh, yeah, yep.
All right,
I think after I graduated from pilot training, I was committed for 4 more years.
the first 15 or so missions, anything happened that was noteworthy?
No, you flew into North Vietnam, you know you're in a dangerous zone, if you go down. Although if you're far enough away from the capital, we did rescues, we flew airplanes in there and got pilots out. But they had an area in there that they would not come to get you. And that was what they call the high threat triangle. There was two major rail lines coming out of China to Hanoi. The northwest rail line and the northeast west, like a V.
Supply trains?
Yeah, and there were just so many anti-aircraft guns. I mean, our rescue people just couldn't cross those lines because of the threat of being shot down, et cetera, et cetera. So if you went down inside that, which I did, I know nobody's gonna come and get it. I mean, if the party's over, you're on your own. Yeah.
Did they have SAMs at that time?
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah.
How good were they?
If you weren't dumb or do stupid things, you could beat them
Yeah.
pretty easy. I mean, if you saw it launch off the ground here, I mean, you had a radar indicator off of their signal that would point like an arrow to work the rough direction, and the length of that strobe on that scope would give you an idea of range. It wasn't real accurate, but it would give you an idea. Is it 5 mile or 10 or 20? But if you saw it come off the ground, you could dive down, and when it came off, before it started to self-guide itself, it couldn't make that arc and come back to get you. But it was guys, not paying attention, or especially flying over a cloud deck where you can't see the ground. You know it got airborne, you can hear it, the frequency that changes.
Well, how frequent did you use the weasel approach, which were the
That is-
104s?
Pretty much, they went in with us every time. Normally, if you were in the high threat PAC 6 area, we always had at least one weasel, okay? And then he may have one of us, we call a D model with him with the Shrike missile that'll track that surface-to-air missile.
So then
beam.
both of you are tracking it in some sense?
Yeah, but he's got the real sophisticated stuff, though, Wild Weasel did. He could interpret the ground control radar, the MiG radar, the SAM, anti-aircraft gun. I mean, he could receive all those kind of signals and differentiate between what it was. We primarily just had the one.
So, you did have some defense.
Yeah, oh yeah,
But you had to really,
yeah, you had to watch what you
and I
do.
guess you don't really have a defense against the anti-aircraft.
No, that's pretty
But
hard.
that's a hit or miss kind of thing. They just
Exactly.
throw up a lot of stuff and hope
But then
pieces of it will catch
You
you.
get around those rail lines and they throw enough steel up there, eventually you're gonna run into it. Somebody is. And,
The other guy.
yeah, the other guy is. Good point. And,
Okay, so nothing really
nothing bad,
great
serious.
or serious or threatening occurs. Let's go through October 17th, leading up to your trip. There's some unusual stuff in there I'd like you to share with us.
Yeah, there was an unusual mission that morning, the 17th of October, 1967. It was the day before, when we got that target, which was the Depcal rail yard northeast of Hanoi, about 16, 17 miles. Some reason I felt very uneasy about that next day. You know, the rest of these ones, I was up there before and never bothered me. But I wrote a letter home even, saying, I feel apprehensive about that mission. With mission we're on tomorrow, I can't tell what it is. You can't do that.
Now, how many are in your group? 4, 5, 6?
Oh, no, there was 16 of us.
Oh, 16.
And then 2 weasels and 2 of our Ds up about 2-3 minutes ahead of us. They were going in just ahead of us to watch for the radar stuff, So there was 20 airplanes going. And, but I was apprehensive about that. I have no idea why. But normally, and what happened after that, we normally got up like, around 2 o'clock in the morning. Then we go to the wing briefing of all 20 airplanes. And then from there, you would then go to your squadron, where you, depending on how many flights you had, like most time it was 4 squadrons there, so each had 4 aircraft on there. So we'd go there brief for our 4, and then we'd go to the mess hall, eat, and then from there come back, get our equipment, and go to the flight line.
Now, the briefing is to kind of give you an idea.
Yeah, what the target,
what
what's,
your target,
yeah, and
anything unique about the target, what you
Yeah.
need to watch out for.
what defensive air power,
Yeah.
what power they have, anti-aircraft, SAM sites, the route going in and out, for potential danger to you.
Now, let me take a step back, Don, and this is something I need you to elaborate a bit on. When a SAM goes off, it sends out signals that are all picked up by the weasels or the
Yeah. They're,
pre-entry aircraft. So right away, they're identified and you know where they're at.
yeah,
Do they move those SAM sites around?
Some were
Which is
mobile.
why they were on the trucks?
yeah.
Because the minute you release, you're exposed and somebody come down and wipe you out.
Yeah, but you gotta understand that surface to air missile site, SAM site, first of all, he's sweeping you with the radar, okay? And once that radar hits your airplane, you get the signal. You receive that, and you have it not visually, but you're also in your headset. You get that radar signal in your ear, it's a high pitch, lower pitch, maybe a medium pitch, so you know you're being looked at, okay? And you know when he launches, because as soon as he launches that missile at you, he has to go to what they call PRF, pulse reoccurring frequency for steerage of the missile. And then now you get a real high squeal, and then you get a red light on the dash. It says launch. So you know he's launched it. Now he's got to keep that radar on you and to direct that missile.
Yeah,
Now, we had jammers on the airplane, now we're jamming him. And a lot of times they go right by you. I mean, because he can't see you because of the radar electronic jamming on his scope. And it had the capability of visual steerage on, or detonation. They could watch it go, and then when they thought it was close to you, they had a command detonation button they could push, but, that
real
far
cat and
down.
mouse game, huh?
Yep, but it was pretty, depth perception. I mean, how do you know when that missile's right alongside? I've had them go by me probably 2 rooms away that go right on by, because they were jamming them and they can't tell when we got there. With the jamming also messed up the proximity fuse on it too, so.
All right, sorry to go back, but
Yeah.
I wanted to get that clear. Let's go back to
But they
the,
move them too, they would move them.
yeah,
But the launchers, they have to move the launchers, okay, that the missile was sitting on. But they didn't do too much of that. They did one time move some down by the DMZ, but I don't know if it ever became operational.
let's go back to the October 17th again. You get up at 2 in the morning, go to your
Go to the briefings.
briefings, and then how can you sit down and have breakfast just before you're going out to kill people and get killed?
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I have a hard time with that.
I never was a breakfast eater, never have been a breakfast eater, so all I have is had coffee, that's
Yeah.
all I had. And, you're thinking about the day.
I'm sure.
You know what's coming, because sometimes you,
And you got enough missions to know what it's all
oh
about.
yeah, I mean, sometimes you get to that target and there's, that flak is popping all around you, they're shooting the hell out at you,
Now, you've got 3 kids,
4.
4 kids,
Mhm.
and a wife at home.
Mhm.
How often do you keep in touch with them? I mean, there's a limit to what you can say to them, but,
Yeah.
I mean, you stay in touch
You
with them.
don't really have anything else to do there, so you pretty much probably write a short letter or note or whatever, almost daily or every other day. But there's no problem with mail in that case. I mean, you had a pretty good response time with the mail. Yeah, you couldn't obviously divulge,
Yeah.
really what you were doing.
Now, while you were in Thailand, how long had it been since you'd been home? Couple of years?
Oh, no, I left here, I got home about the 28th of July after I finished combat crew training at McConnell Air Force Base. And I left there around mid-August. I was home like a couple weeks,
Oh,
and then I
Okay.
went over, and that was in July of '67, and of course I was shot down in October.
all right, so after you finished with the routine, you're getting ready, what happens to your ship?
Then you go out to the airplane. Well, what happened to mine, anytime we briefed, like we had 20 airplanes on that strike that morning, we would have a couple of spares standing by with the pilots in them and everything in case somebody has a problem. Well, when I went out to the airplane and I checked the weapons, I was carrying 6 750-pound bombs, 2 external fuel tanks, two jammers, 2 missiles, air-to-air missiles I could shoot. And airplane checked out good. I jumped in the airplane and went through the
Pre-flight check?
pre-flight check cockpit, started it up, and going through the navigation system, electronics in it, and all of a sudden the crew chief walked out in front of the airplane. I had to look up, and he was out there, and he was going, shut the engine down. So I said, no, plug in, get your headset, because he could plug in out there and talk to me, So he plugged in, and I said, what's the problem, Chief? Well, you got a severe nose gear actuator leak, hydraulic leak. And I said, well, have you called maintenance? No. I said, call maintenance, get them out here. So then I called Dwight Sullivan, was the Strike Force commander that morning. He was on his 98th mission, and we had 2 more to go. And I called, he was Detroit 1, I was Detroit 2. The call sign was Detroit. And I told him, hey, I say I got a severe nose gear actuator leak, and you better have the spare start. So I heard him call the spare, go ahead and start. You're more likely to be taking my place. Then when they got ready to taxi, he said, how you doing? I said, they're still working on it. So I told the spare, okay, join in.
Now, the spare would be somebody else, some other
It's
aircraft.
another extra airplane, yeah.
So you had a chance.
Yeah, I had a chance not to go. So, a little bit, the crew chief came back up on the head and said, hey, we got it fixed. What do you want to do? What are you going to do? I said, hey, pull the chocks, I'm going. By this time, they'd all roared off down the runway and they were gone. This is probably half hour later, 20 minutes later. I said, pull the chocks, I'm going. Well, you got that thinking, you got to fly 100. You might as well do it right now, fast as you can. So he pulled the chocks, I taxied out, took off, and I caught up with them out over the Gulf of Tonkin as they were going in on the tankers to refuel. And I called Detroit 1. I said, hey, Detroit 1, this is 2. I'm airborne. I'm about maybe 50 miles off from the tankers. And I said, want permission to take my spot back, send the spare back home. I said, okay. So I told the spare, go back, and I took my spot back. It was a bad decision that day.
Now, at that point, sending somebody home alone is not a big problem because
No,
you're
we're-
still not in a combat
No,
area.
no,
Okay.
no, we're off the coast there, and we're gonna cross by the DMZ and cross Laos, it's not a big
Okay.
deal. Yeah, no MiGs down there.
Now you can tell us what happens.
Well, it was a strange sort of day, I guess, and I did that. That was one mistake, I guess, you might say. And normally when we went in, we ingressed into North Vietnam, just above Haiphong there was a big battery of 155 millimeter anti-aircraft guns. And every time we went through there was a big ring of them. You could see the flashes as they fired, but they never hit anything. Never, not to my knowledge, never hit an airplane that I know of during that time. But that morning we crossed right there at that same area, they never shot at us. Well, that seems strange, That makes you feel a little uneasy. Well, why? Well, then we going on in, we're listening to on our frequency was that 121 out off the coast of North Vietnam. He's down 200 feet off the water with his big highfalutin radar. And there's no MiG activity, no MiGs taking off, no nothing. I mean, it's just like a quiet Easter Sunday day. I mean, nobody's shooting at us, and that was unusual. Somebody's going to shoot at us, And,
Coming in, how far are you up?
we went in about 21,000, 19,000. See, we flew what we call a spread formation because of our jammers. So I don't fly, normally you fly formation with an airplane, you're flying like this, okay? But with the jammers, you spread it
Get
about
bigger space,
1,500
coverage.
feet, so in case his jammer goes out, your jammer will overlap him and his will overlap you. So now you get into a tricky situation. That's the formation you gotta fly. Well, when he rolls in to the dive bombing pass, he's gonna roll like this. Well, you're out here. You gotta roll and kick the rudder hard and come down and cross underneath him. And then when he rolls out, you roll out on the other side of him, right close to him. So if you can't pick up the target on your sight, when you see his bombs release, you're really sure it's right with him. But the strange part of all this that happened was, I'm looking, I've got to watch him because I got to maintain that formation. I'm not looking on for the target. I don't have time to do all that. That's his job. And he called target in sight, and then he said, I like the burners, like the afterburners. So we started to accelerate and climb. And then when he got to that point where he was ready to roll in, he did the roll. Well, he calls the roll also. Rolling in, and then you got to do all this to get over there. Well, when I got somewhere down in here, I took a direct hit out of an anti-aircraft round. And
What did it feel like?
just
Just a bump?
A thump, bump, and then of course I started getting smoke in the cockpit. But later, number 4 man got shot down too, and he said, you probably took the first round out of that gun. The odds are probably 3-4 million to 1 that they could hit you on the first shot. It's more designed for the shell to come up, explode close enough to you, it throws that shrapnel against the airplane. But apparently it took her right into the missile bay, which would carry an extra 450-gallon fuel tank in there, because we didn't have a nuke missile in there. We didn't have anything, so it carried an extra fuel tank. And that apparently what penetrated there, and when it exploded, along with the fuel tank, it severed all my flight controls. The only thing I had was rudder. I didn't have any way to roll or pitch, change the pitch on the airplane. Well, I was underneath Dwight Sullivan, so when that happened, so I managed to roll it out with the rudders, and then it just started to pitch up, which I had no longer any control, and I could see, I could see in my mirrors, the fire behind me. I'm burning. And apparently, what happened when he rolled, about the time he rolled out, I came up right by him, and my vertical stabilizer, the tail, hit his 450-gallon fuel tank on the left wing, and it exploded. Well, when it exploded, I never saw him, and of course, I'm trying to get the airplane to fly, get rid of the smoke, and I know I'm burning that. And when I saw that huge ball of fire, I thought a SAM went off next to me. It's just when a SAM bursts, it's just a huge ball, red ball of fire, And I thought a SAM went off right next to me. Well, I never knew for probably a year and a half that I ever hit him. And knocked him down. He went a couple more miles and became uncontrollable. He had to jump out. But and I'm trying to get it to fly. We had what we call a system called the slab lock, that if you can get that slab to move, you can lock it into a position that hopefully will get you far enough to get away, but I could never get it to lock. And shortly, then I realized that I'm almost going vertical now, I've come up, I'm still dive, but the airplane, if it had gone this way underneath, it would have pitched down, I probably would have never got out. I doubt it. But it pitched up. Then when it got up, after I hit that explosion from his tank, and then the airplane broke in half right behind the cockpit. And I became, then I just started tumbling. And another quirk thing, because of that tumbling, I'm being thrown out of the seat. Well, I came up out of that seat, maybe about that high, and they tell you, they count on it. If you're not in that seat when that rocket fires, when that seat comes up and hits your leg, it will break your legs. And that's what I was thinking about. And I kept trying to get into the seat, and I couldn't get back down into the seat. The only thing I can think of, a lap belt the holder on the side of the seat here is like a Y, and that belt goes in here and then, you know, comes across you. The only thing I can think of, that some way, somehow, I must have, when I got in the airplane, because it's hooked right to that seat, I must have pushed it down, okay? So it's down like this. And then when I tightened my belt, I never really tightened it. So once my weight come off that seat, that belt must have turned straight up, because it's about that long. And that's why I was up out of that seat. I kept trying to push myself into the seat, you know, because I didn't want to eject off the seat. Well, finally, last time I looked at that, and I'm falling like a streamlined rock, you know, tumbling. And realized that I can't get back in the seat. So I got no choice. I'm gonna eject, or I ain't gonna make it that way. So I put my hand up against the canopy and pushed as hard as I could, and get myself down as low as I could, and then reach down, pull the handle up, and then squeeze the trigger, and away I went. But I think because of the tumbling action, no great forward speed, I didn't sustain any injury from it. Because the canopy comes off, then the seat goes right away, right behind the canopy. If the canopy don't come off, the seat goes right through the canopy. It'll break it. So there I find myself, and I remember pushing back so hard in that seat. And when I came out of it, I'm looking, I could see the parachute coming, streaming out of the pack behind me, you know. And of course, when it blossomed, it's a good feeling when that chute pops open. But, you know, I don't know whether it was the first or second thought that goes through your mind is, you know, it happens to the other guy, you know, I'm the other guy today. But and then once the chute opens, then you have a survival pack. You're sitting, it's strapped to your fanny down here, and you want to get rid of that because if you hit the ground with that behind you, you probably break your legs. So I reached down and well, first thing, you know, I realize where I'm at, and I look all around, and it's quiet, so quiet. I can hear the bombs going off over at the target area, which is a few miles away from it, but very, very quiet. And I'm looking around and boy, I'm a lucky guy. I check my arms and my legs, nothing's broken. And man, you're lucky. And then I look all around, and as far as I can see in all directions is North Vietnam. Now, that's when the sick feeling develops in the stomach. You know you're in trouble. And I know I'm in an area that they're not going to come to rescue me. They're not going to come in there. Don't do that. So I pull that handle and on that survival pack, and it drops on a lanyard down about 20 feet below you with a raft attached to it. And in that pack you got socks and food, a 22 rifle light, some medical stuff, and all of a sudden I can hear this shh. I went, what in the world is that? And I'm looking around, I look down, and it's the life raft.
Inflating?
No, the bottle with the gas bottle is going off, but the raft isn't getting bigger. I thought, boy, I'm sure glad I didn't go down in the Gulf of Tonkin. I'd be blowing that life raft up. But, you know, when I looked down, I was going to go into a small hamlet there, and I could see the people all scurrying around down there. And to my knowledge, nobody shot at me, which we did have problems over there with them shooting at you as you're floating down. To my knowledge, nobody shot at me. And I did not want to land in that village, or that hamlet. It was probably more like a hamlet, smaller population. So we carried a knife here, so I climbed up the harness and cut some of the shroud lines on the parachute so I could steer it better. Steer it, so I landed just outside of it. Landed on the edge of a rice paddy, slid down the rice paddy, and started pulling my radios out, breaking the antennas off so they can't use them. And you know, maybe for psychological reasons, you know, they gave you one radio, you could carry an extra one, you carry, you know, two. And I thought, the more radios I got, the better I'm gonna be, you know, if something happens to one, I gotta back up. You carried one in the pack that you drop down on the lanyard. but I wasn't gonna have time to get to that. But I had one on each vest, and so I pulled them out and broke the antennas off them so they couldn't get them and transmit, Mayday, to come in like a down pilot, which they would do to take the emergency beeper, and the fighters would pick up that signal, which you mean is a air crew down, and come to you, and then they set up the anti-aircraft, and it's a setup deal. And I, of course, couldn't get the one in the pack. They were right there on me, and probably there were about 6 of them. And, out of the 6, I'd say four were females, which was rather surprising. But they had the Ho Chi Minh type of jacket on and the pith helmet. And the weapons were very old. I mean, because I knew I was in an area that there's no rescue going to be attempted for me to get me, I'm at their mercy. And when I stood up, later I thought I did a dumb thing. I reached in my vest and pulled out my pistol. For sure, I ain't fighting this whole place, Well, when I pulled like that, they could have probably very well have shot me, thinking I was drawing the weapon on them. And I pulled it out and I put my hands up, and an older Vietnamese jerked the pistol out of my hand and pointed it right between my eyes. He's about this far from my face, and he cocks it, and he's shaking. I mean, he's as nervous or afraid as probably as I am, And I'm thinking, I'm looking at, of course, that barrel's only about that big, but boy, looking down at that close, it looked like it was this big, And first thing I thought was, this guy's going to shoot me with my own gun. I thought he was going to shoot me in the face with my pistol. Finally, he put it down, and they stripped me of everything down to my underwear, and they went through my pack. Of course, first thing that went was my watch and my Zippo lighter. That was prized, and my boots, because they didn't have boots back then. That was their prize for getting me. And then they took me into the hamlet. I did, on the one radio, I transmitted before I broke the antenna. I was on the ground, I was about to be captured, and had no injuries. And see you bye, broke the antenna. But nobody ever heard the transmission, whether I didn't have a good position on the button or, I can't.
So when did the regular militia come in and?
They held me that was probably around 10:30 in the morning, because we were late getting off and all that kind of stuff. And that morning also, normally we took off before daylight to be over the target about daylight, and we got delayed due to weather. So we were probably three hours late getting off the ground. So they held me there, and primarily the women guarded me. They had these old antique weapons, Springfield rifles, and I wasn't about to test whether they would shoot or not. And finally I was given a dirt floor, mud thatched roof, kind of a hut type, and after a few hours they gave me a bowl of rice, about that big around, what they call it. And then there was more flies on that rice than there was kernels of rice in that thing. I couldn't believe it. And so they gave me some water, a little thing of water. And then as the day, I would say that hamlet probably held or housed maybe 50 to 100 people, maybe. And as the day went by, they kept taking me out of there and putting me on the stoop of that hut there. And all these people would be ranting and raving and shaking their fists. And as the day went by, it was more and more people. I would say probably that late afternoon, there were probably 300 people there. They all come to see me. But about midday, they tried to break into the hut. And they were probably gonna, I guess they were gonna string me up, but trying to break the doors in, and these three women I had in there with me with the rifles were pointing at him, but nothing they could do. And finally, after this went on for a little while, and I figured they're going to break in, they're going to get me. As the door, somebody hollered, and they took the bar off the door, a piece of wood, holding the door closed. And this guy slips in there, and he's, I would say, probably wasn't 5 feet tall, dressed in black pajamas, just like you think of the Viet Cong in South Vietnam. And he's got a machine gun. And once he got in there, he turned around and pointed it to the crowd. I mean, like he was going to shoot him. You know, if they broke in, whether he would or not, I don't know. But he was there, I guess, to protect me. And finally that settled down. You know, another interesting thing happened just before they made me walk the gauntlet when they took me towards the truck. They brought me out on that stoop, and it was a big Orientaler, and I would say he was probably 6'2", and Vietnamese probably height's probably 5 to 5'6", and he had a different kind of tunic on. And I recognized the tunic, and he was a Chinese, no doubt in my mind, and he had a camera, and he wanted me to get down on my knees and put my hands up, you know, with a surrender attitude kind of thing. I got on my knees because after being threatened quite a bit, but I would never raise my hands for him. I wouldn't. For some reason I wasn't going to do that. I don't know why. So he finally took my picture with me kneeling and left. Never ever saw him again. But I swear he was Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
No doubt in my mind.
So when did you get picked up by the militia?
Just before dark, they not another. You know, that they would be militia. Those people guarding me were like our civil defense would be. You know, only they were armed. Okay, they were armed. That's what
Fairly abusive though?
Not that bad during the day. They took me to by a truck to another camp, and they tried to interrogate me. It was a black man, spoke French, big guy, 6'2", 6'4". But I don't speak French. But you know, I could get the idea what he was trying to do. You know, some words are close enough. And finally, I really think he was probably an individual who was left over from the old French days, okay, when the French controlled it. But he was a big guy. So then he took me back to that village and put me back in that hut. But just before daylight, or just before dark, I know that I could tell they were going to move me. There was a lot of conversation going on, of course, Vietnamese. I didn't understand anything. And then they opened those 2 doors in the front, and when they opened them up, they had me standing right there, and I look out, nobody there. And I don't know how many times during the day I've been taken out there, and probably went from 100 to 300 people. Well, what in the world? Where are all these people? What happened to them? You know, where'd they go? And strange. So I was still, you know, I was in my underwear, lower boxers, and my hands were tied behind my back. And at that moment, no, I wasn't blindfolded. And but when I walked down the steps and turned the corner of that hut there, I could see a path that maybe ran 75 yards, maybe 50 yards to the right to a little 2-track road. There was a building right there, I remember that. Anyways, when I rounded the corner there, now I knew where all the people were. They were all lined up on each side of the path that I was going to be forced to walk. In essence, walk the gauntlet. And just before, and I had like 2 or 3 guards behind me who were pushing me. And 2 young kids, I would say probably 8 to 10 years old, ran up to me, and they had bamboo spears, and they stuck me a couple times with the spears. So I knew this is not gonna be good. So as I walked down through that gauntlet, they got even. You know, they were hitting me with clubs and hoe handles, shovel handles, and I got about halfway to that first turn, and this Vietnamese stepped out of the crowd on my left, and he grabbed me by the back of the head and forced me down, and he had a hacksaw on it. He's gonna cut my head off. And, so these 2 or 3, whatever, were behind me here, they finally got him off of me. Got him, knocked him out of the way, and I kept going. But then before, by the time we got to the road, it really became uncontrollable. I was completely surrounded. These people were trying to get me. And I got 3 or 4 of these ladies with me, females, and they can't really control. And this little guy with the machine gun shows up again. And he comes into the middle, we're in a circle, they're around me. And he pushed his way in there, and he's swinging that machine gun on him, and hollering at him. I assume he said, I'm gonna shoot you, I guess. I don't know what he was saying, but finally and then we slowly kept moving towards that building, and another Vietnamese showed up with a rifle, and we were standing by it was a granary, and it was locked, and this guy finally pulled a pair of pliers out of his pocket and broke the lock, and got me into that granary, that building. And of course pretty soon they got the building surrounded. They were banging on the doors and trying to break them in and all that. Finally subsided. It was just getting dark then. And finally this Vietnamese shows up. And, we were probably in there an hour and a half, and he broke in English. He said, basically, when I opened the door, you gotta run. So I thought, I don't know where I'm running to or what's direct, but he opened that door, and then I could see a lantern hanging on the back of be like our Army 6-ply truck. A lantern hanging up there. It was a Chinese truck. And he pointed, and we started running. Of course, the villagers or the Hamrod people who lived there realized what we were doing, so they started running, trying to cut us off before we got to that truck. And we got to that truck just about the same time, and with the 2 or 3 on that, they were military. And needless to say, during the day, I was praying to see the military. I felt as my life was being threatened by these Soviet people, and I thought my chances would be better with the military. They have some appreciation for the fact that I'm military, you're military, which didn't turn out to be true.
Geneva Convention, all this other stuff.
Yeah, exactly, which didn't work. And they finally, they got those guys that were on the back of that truck, grabbed me, and of course that truck's way off the ground. Big dual wheels like our big dual axle. Reached out and jerked me up in there. You know what? And I was now when they made me run. This guy was holding on to me. He made me run. I was blindfolded. I don't know. But I could see. I could see light ahead of me, so I knew I was probably running for a truck or a vehicle or something. But when the guy jerked me up into that truck, back of that truck, I heard somebody moaning, and I could see under my blindfold, and it was this guy Tony Andrews, who was our number 3 guy in the fight, number 4 guy, and he got shot down.
So he got the Zingy too.
So they got 3 out of our 4. No, they got 2 of us, but I got the lead guy. Joking, they always say, how come I never got credit for a kill? Well, you got the wrong airplane, But and not unbeknownst to me, Dwight Sullivan, the Strike Force commander, is in the front cab. Well, so I don't have any idea. I don't even know I had him. And they kept, during all that interrogation, they wanted me to give them the name of the Strike Force commander, you know. Well, I didn't know he had been shot down. So, of course, you never give anybody the right name. That, you know, I'm doing give him a fictitious name. All this stuff. I knew Dwight Sullivan was there, and so I didn't have any, Tony Andrews, who was laying on the back down on the foot, because he broke his leg. But I lied, and I couldn't figure out why they kept beating the hell out of me over who was the Strike Force commander. I didn't know they had him, see? So I wouldn't give him his real name. I gave him Tony's real name, because obviously he's there with me, I know that for a fact. But, and you know, I never did figure that out till about a year later when I happened to see him in the camp, you know, and found out he was,
A lot of abuse though, that,
yeah. Well, the reason, I think, well, the Geneva Agreements states, basically, first paragraph talks about a declaration of war. Any military personnel captured, et cetera, will be treated as prisoners of war, you know. Well, there was no declaration of war. But the second paragraph states, which North Vietnam was a signature of, the second paragraph states, any armed conflict between two nations, those military personnel captured will be treated as prisoners of war. Well, they wouldn't buy the second paragraph. They said, you're not protected under Geneva. You don't know.
why?
Because they said they didn't sign it. Well, they did sign it. And
Yeah, but I thought there was a reason that you were bombing
well, we're violating their airspace,
there.
okay? And
So
that's what
Took
they're-
you out of the Geneva
That's
Convention
right.
coverage.
Well, because there's no declaration of war.
Okay,
If there was a declaration of war, and we're bombing them, well, that's the way war is.
okay.
But they were saying that's why they wouldn't abide by the second paragraph, which doesn't require
Mhm.
a declaration of war. So we were not protected, and therefore they could do to us as they so chose. And they were very brutal. Their methods of torture were rather medieval in nature. And, you know, a lot of the guys during that first 6 to 8, 9 days of interrogation, torture, who never talked to them, didn't make it.
Mhm.
You're either gonna talk to them or you're gonna die. Well, that's your two choices.
That become pretty evident then.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And they, you know, during the first phase was a military interrogator who had very poor command of the English language. You finally figured it out after a day or two of getting the daylights kicked out of you that you could lie, cheat, and steal, and there was no way you could prove you're wrong. Okay? I mean, a lot of times they made you lie just to satisfy their own ego, even though what you're telling is not true. But that displays to them the command they have over you.
Mhm.
Second phase was autobiographical data. I mean, where'd you go to high school? What sports did you participate in? Where does your dad work? How much money does he make? How much life insurance do you have? Who's that life insurance payable to? I mean, really detailed. You know, we were convinced that was a byproduct of Russia, because Russia used to keep a dossier on all military officers they can get their hands on.
Mhm.
Even though the Vietnamese, there were some, you know, that probably could speak the language very well, but couldn't write it grammatically correct, okay? But this was so perfect.
Mhm.
I mean, this was not a byproduct of North Vietnam. And then you went into the third phase. Now, this guy, this was a very serious situation now. He is a political interrogator, good command of the English language, right down the usage of idioms. And he is there to convince you that you're wrong and the Vietnamese are right. That's the first thing. His second job is to extract from you that you are a war criminal. A signed confession or taped. And I found out later that he was educated in Czechoslovakia and Russia, that political type also. You know, we got in all this time, anytime you were being interrogated, you always had a guard or two standing behind you that would whack you whenever he nodded or said something in Vietnamese. And he always had a pistol in his hand, and he'd be, you know, pointing it at you, you know, playing with a revolver. You know, I mean, like, you know, he's gonna shoot you in a minute.
Right.
And what I'm going to tell you is the absolute truth. You know, after 7, 8 days, first of all, now you're 7, 8 days into this, you've had very little sleep, very little to eat. You know, you're starting to get to the end of the rope. And this political type says you're going to sign this confession that you are a war criminal. Well, my reaction to him was, and he's got the pistol in his hand. And I told him, I'm not going to sign it, so you might as well just shoot me. You know, he cocked it.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. But, and everybody will say, if I tell them the story, oh, you were a hero. I was no hero. Because by now, you've had to talk to him.
Mhm.
So you're a traitor. You violated the Geneva, the Code of Conduct, the military Code of Conduct you have violated now. And the military Code of Conduct states you will give only name, rank, date of birth.
Serial
That's it.
number.
Yeah, that's so scary. That's it. You're not allowed to give any more than that. That's the way it's written, or it was. We changed it. Name, rank, yeah, date of birth. So you already have a guilt complex. You feel when you get out of there, if you get out of there, you're going to be tried. You violated the Code of Conduct. You committed treason is what you did.
According to the code.
According to the Code of Conduct, yes. We got back, we demanded they change it, and we said it to, you will attempt to give only.
Mhm.
Not you will give only. So, you know, when I told the guy to shoot me, I wasn't going to sign it. And you know, I felt that's the easiest way out of this. I'll never have to be confronted with what I did.
Mhm.
You know, plus you're tired, you're weak, you run down. You know, you don't really give a shit. Excuse my English.
What
You just don't
point
care.
were they telling you stories about how confused everything was over here? And there was a story about telling you that.
That was later. Later when she got into the prison system, where
Oh, I see.
yeah, they showed us films that had to be 30, 40 years old, and all the white line back, way back during some of the race riots,
Oh,
even
my
further back.
goodness.
The policemen on horseback beating the blacks with clubs and all this kind, even whites too. They said, this is what's going on in your country over this war.
Tell us a little bit about what you thought about the negative reactions that people in the US created over there and the positives that helped you get out.
Well,
I imagine at this point, you're nowhere thinking you're gonna get out of this.
yeah, we don't know. what-
But at some point down the road, there were some negative things that you got
Yeah.
exposed to, and there were some positive.
But
like
I-
the
let me just
families
tell you
and the
I'll-
stuff.
I'll tell you the rest about this confession.
Okay,
When I said that to him, okay, I told him, you might as well shoot me because I'm not gonna sign it because I ain't working. Sometime there, one of the two guards behind me, struck me a couple of real severe blows with a rifle butt, which fractured my C4 vertebrae. And I went into an unconscious state. I have no idea how long I was out, but when I woke up, I realized that I can move my legs a little bit, but I couldn't move my hands and arms. I think he was intelligent enough to realize that he had inflicted some major damage on me. So he made a few gestures, rather crude, threatening, and picked up his recorder and paper and pencils and walked out. I never saw him again, ever did I see him again. But what had happened when he hit me with that rifle butt, not only did it fracture the C4 vertebrae in my neck, but I think it didn't sever the spinal cord. What it did, it was such a trauma to the spinal cord, I ended up with this paralysis for maybe 6 months. And slowly got it back, but one of the crazy things that can happen, they put me in the basement of the Hanoi Hilton, which was nothing but rats and water. And their medic had to take care of me, and he didn't like that. He didn't like having to do that. So finally, after about 3-4 days, they took me out of there and put me in a truck and took me to the, like the city limits of Hanoi and into a camp, and threw me in a cell with 3 other guys. And the one guy in there who was Bob Barnett, who was shot down 2 weeks before me out of my same squadron. Guess what his profession was other than being a fighter pilot? Physical therapist.
oh my goodness.
Now you figure the odds. The Vietnamese didn't know that. They had no idea. But just the quick things that can happen. And I tell you, that guy worked with me day and night. I got so I hated him. He didn't leave me alone. He wouldn't leave me alone. He was working my arms, my hands, my feet, hands, fingers, and they slowly started to come out of there. Yeah. Going to what you're talking about, a lot of the propaganda. Well, we're all aware of the anti-war movement, obviously. What started all this, in my mind, what started this anti-war movement, which was a benefit to the enemy, needless to say, a benefit to Jane Fonda, who is now one of my favorite people. When you go back to that time frame, the president of this country was telling the American people, we are not going to send our boys over there to do the job the Asian boys should be doing, okay? And that's what he said. It's true. And that only these military people that are being sent over there are as advisors only. Well, after a year or 2 or 3, whatever it was, the news media got into Saigon or got into South Vietnam and discovered that our troops were in combat, period. They were just advisors. We had combat troops in the field. And I personally think the American people felt they were being hoodwinked. When you lie about something or try to cover something up, It's gotta be wrong. And I really think that was the grassroots movement towards the anti-war. I really do believe that. And I think it's logical. The Vietnamese were showing us some different movies that were obviously these rallies of these anti-war groups, you know, rallying in different cities, and they would show us these films, and you know, that was an asset for them. That helped to encourage them. Jane Fonda being the worst one, and I think any other war, if she'd have done what she did there, would have been tried as a traitor, no doubt in my mind. I mean, they even showed us, I don't know, you've probably seen it when they were sitting on a North Vietnamese anti-aircraft gun, and she's shooting in the airplane gun, and bang, bang, and shoots it down. Man, we don't believe she shot it down. Absolutely not, I don't. But that provided one hell of a propaganda tool for them. And then she'd transmit on the radio in the camp, you know, she'd be transmitting to the troops in South Vietnam. And of course, we're plugged into it. And, you know, lay down your weapons, you know, the United States is wrong, you know, North Vietnamese are right, and on and on and on. And then when she came there on a couple of occasions, we had prisoners who had little pieces of paper with names on it. Because, like for me, my wife didn't know if I was alive for like a little over 2 years. And we knew, and they told us that, the interrogator, hey, we're not gonna tell your family and friends you're alive, or we have you, you're a captive here. We can't go over and bomb the United States like you're bombing us. So the only way we get even with you is make your family and your friends and loved ones suffer. And the only way we can do it is not let them know that you're alive. You're actually, were captured, not killed. Okay? But when she shook the hand of two different instances, shook the prisoner's hand, most time you were tortured and forced to see her. I mean, nobody wanted to see her. But they're going to make it rather detrimental to you if you didn't. And they told you what the questions would be asked and what your answer would be, period. But when they shook hands with her, they had that in the palm of their hand and gave it to us, hoping that she would take it out so that those families would know those guys are alive, okay? And she immediately turned them right over to the Vietnamese. And then they took him, and those two, they beat the daylights out of him, beat the hell out of him. And, needless to say, we don't have any love for her.
Now, what about the good stuff?
I
The
don't.
families and that wrote,
Oh, you know, in the bracelet wearing, okay? That was, when we found out about that, we were shocked, because it was like maybe sometime towards the latter part of our confinement there, somebody was shot down. A new prisoner shot down, and he still had that bracelet on him. And that's how we found out about it. And we later found out that Ross Perot met with the foreign minister in Vientiane, Laos, and he was trying to arrange our release for a sum of like $5 million. Okay? And he was trying to negotiate this with the Vietnamese minister. And then they got into this discussion, and for example, he told us this personally, that this foreign minister says to him, basically, you mean to tell me that 240 million Americans are worried about 200 or 300 people? I mean, he just couldn't conceive that. You know, over there, life, you know, being a typical Oriental, there's not a lot of value in human life.
No.
They just could not conceive it or understand it or accept it. And the, the, the families, the military really took, I took very, very good care of our families. My wife could call a casualty assistance officer who was at San Antonio, Texas, Lackland Air Force Base, day or night, didn't matter. If she had a problem, question, she could call him and get some resolve with it. And they made sure they were well taken care of. We were promoted right along with our peers, which was contrary to Korea. Those guys never were promoted. I have nothing but praise. I know I say that at least from first-hand experience with the Air Force. But after getting out of there and talking to Navy or Marine or whoever, it was the same way. And they took very, very good.
Were there any communications that went on between you and the family while you were there? Were you able to write? I think you told me once.
Yeah,
that-
after 2 years, I was allowed to write.
So at that point, they knew you were still alive.
Well, it took a little while because I was still suffering with my hands. So when my wife finally got that, you were only allowed to write about 5 or 6 lines about that long on that little format paper they had, Vietnamese. They couldn't prove, well, she said that's, because I had written, obviously, letters before I was shot down, but it was so crude. So the Air Force hired a handwriting expert, and they gave him the old letter and that letter, and he evaluated them and said, yeah, that was my handwriting. So that confirmed it. And did we communicate with the United States? Yes, we did. I'm not at liberty to tell you how we did it, but it certainly wasn't like Starlink 17 where we had a hand crank radio. It was a very slow, methodical system. And we did get information out, and we got information back. Wow, I tell you one time, one night, I was at the zoo and they pulled us out of there and brought us all back into Hanoi Hilton, stripped us down naked and everything, took all our clothes away from everything away from us. And that was later on, maybe about 3 or 4 years after he'd been there, and they never would allow Red Cross in there. We never got anything from the Red Cross until a few days just before we were released. They would not let the Red Cross. They finally started letting the families send a small box periodically. I don't know at the time. And when you got the first box, I mean, it's crammed full of stuff. Toothpaste, toothbrushes. I mean, tobacco. They couldn't send cigarettes, although we saw them smoking American cigarettes. Pipe or tobacco was, like I said, candy bars, stuff like that. And the first box full. The next box, 2/3 full. Next box, half full. And when you realize they were stealing it, okay? Well, we were getting microfiche. And the reader to be able to read it. And this was being put into candy bars, stuff like that. They probably, because they stole it and bit into it and discovered what was inside. So we were stripped of all our clothes, everything. Physical, I mean, I won't go into the physical. And that's how they caught us. And, they were not happy campers over that one. And,
I suppose, to some degree, the ability of you prisoners to work together is all that kept you sane. Nobody sat in a corner and just wanted to die. You just kept doing stuff, continually finding.
That's absolutely true. I think, we were, you you gotta admit, we're all officers except for 3 who were enlisted. But almost all officers were some degree of college, if not a college degree, right? So we were, well, a little better educated, let's say. I'm not trying to say we had any more advantage. We were no different than any other American, as far as I'm concerned. And we realized off the get-go, we had no control over our physical being. They did, okay? We did have control over our mental being, although we were kept sterile. We were never allowed to read anything, write, or do anything like that. And so it became our responsibility to help that guy, and it's his responsibility to help you, and it's his responsibility to help you. You know, we could hopefully survive it if we could keep our mental process going. And that's why communicating to other cells, cell blocks, was so important to us. A lot of it was psychological too. If you think there's only 4 of you there, and you find out there's 127 in the camp, that gives you a lot of relief, because you're sitting there, I only got one out of 4 chances I'll go back to interrogation tomorrow and get the daylights kicked out of me. But now with 127 in there, I got 1 in 127th chance now. You know, that was the psychological thinking.
With exception to the very end where things began to snowball, that there was some evidence you were going to be released because of a lot of the families and letters that were interceding on your behalf.
No, none of the, no, we never got any letters, we never got word from anybody that it was, that the release was coming. They were required to call us all out of the compound once they brought us back to Hanoi, because I was up on the China border from 72. They took us there as hostages. We knew that something was up when the trucks came up the mountain, about 18, 19 of them to get us. Because we had sat there, when we were taken there, we found out later that if they agreed to a settlement between the United States and North Vietnam, that it was 209 of us that were taken up there. And we were led to believe we went to China. Even the facade, and they finally took our blindfolds off, and they wanted to see the front of these buildings, because they were done in Chinese. And we thought we went to China, and that was very disheartening, because we thought our chances of being in North Vietnam were bad, but to be taken to China was even worse. We lose track of it that way. But being energetic Americans as we all are, in a couple of weeks, one of the guys stole I don't know how he did it, but he stole a map off of the ground. And that's how we found out we were sitting like 4 miles from the China border, up in the mountain there. And we said we're going to be there until the war's over. And we found out, like I say later, if they agreed to the settlement, then they would hold us as political hostages, okay, until the complete restoration of North Vietnam. And that's when Kissinger and all the powers to be said, that's not the way it's going to be. It ain't going to happen that way. And you know, we could probably, we might still be there. You know what I mean? The complete restoration in North Vietnam. Well, we said some night we could hear the trucks coming up the mountain every night, probably bringing food to us too. But, you know, 1 or 2 trucks. We'd gone up there with about 18, 19 trucks. And even before that, in October, in the middle of the night, October of 72, they came at night, they blindfolded us, tied us in groups, 3, 4, 5 guys, whatever, and shuffled everybody all around. And we all ended up in different cell blocks or compounds, and we couldn't figure out, you know, what in the world was going on. What are they doing? Well, once we got the communication going again, we found out by making contact with another compound that all of them were captured, let's say, January 66 to July 66. This one over here is August 66 to December 66, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that was the first inkling that something's gonna happen here. Because they almost had us lined up like by capture date.
Hmm.
And we figured something's going on. Well, in December the 9th, that was October, I remember the date, October 25th, 1972. December the 19th, 72, at night. And we were taken to this, and it was, a tall guy could not even stand up. It was almost like something that was built for a nuclear war. I mean, these walls were thick, stone wall, no electricity, no water. And we said someday, if we're gonna get released, we'll hear those trucks come up the mountain, because they would labor coming up that mountain. And one night, sometime after dark, we heard one truck starting to come up. And then 2, 3, 4, etc. He said, we're going somewhere. And we obviously believed that we were gonna be taken back to Hanoi for a release. And of course, we were so positive, we rolled up our rice mat and our little meager couple pieces of clothing and sat there on the bunk bed all night thinking we're gonna go anytime. But, you know, not realizing all these drivers, these truck drivers had to get crew rest, I guess. So the next day they loaded us on the trucks. And we'd stop periodically and they gave us food. They didn't cover us with machine guns. It was mainly English-speaking type, like higher echelon type of guard. The guard in the camps were like the misfits, and they didn't speak English. And they were dropping little hints like, you know, someday when you go home, you know, you don't need to tell the American people about what went on here. You know, I mean, you know, trying to persuade us mentally. And then in January, they released us all out of our compounds there, and they had to play this recording of how we would be released. So that was the first actual confirmation that we were going to get released. And, but well, we weren't going up was rather brutal. You know, we got one little 3 days. You know, what was it? 3 nights and 2 days in that truck going up there from Hanoi, and we got one little meager bowl of rice and maybe like a teacup of water, and we were tied together and blindfolded. But coming back down was a completely different attitude on their part. So we knew. I mean, they would, if we got off the trucks, I mean, we were covered with, you know, machine guns. And then going down, so we knew something was gonna happen.
And then the final stage was boarding the airplane that was taking you out of, where did it fly out of?
Jialam. That terminal wasn't much bigger than this room, right here. That was the terminal. But when they loaded us on these Chinese buses, yeah, we'd been up and down, you know. I mean, for example, we called it gastropolitics. Every now and then, for example, within the camp, I mean, you know, you had no windows or anything. You know, they would come down serving you food, okay? Now, the people up here, when they scooped the ladle down in the bucket of soup, got the solids. And as, you know, as it went on down, you know, these guys down here got nothing but the broth, okay? And it would start the crap going, you know, because not to use the word. The next thing you know, as soon as they were out of the way, they'd be tapping on the wall. Something big's coming up, something's gonna happen. We got all these solids. These guys down here, they didn't get any, okay? I mean, that's just a typical mental process, but, and they had done different things that led us to believe maybe something was imminent, and then they went right down the tube. And, you know, this happens so many times. And, one guy goes and gets surgery or something, you know, which nobody else got, you know, and something's gonna happen. Well, when they told us we're gonna be released, but we still didn't believe them. We didn't, nobody said a word when we arrived at the airport, if you wanna call it that. And we got off that bus and got into the 141s. Nobody said a word, he said, we never said a word. We knew this is too good to happen. I mean, they're gonna stop it, something's gonna happen. They're gonna stop this operation. And we didn't do anything. But once we rolled down the runway, once that airplane left the runway, then it went up for grabs. We knew we were out of there. I don't care if they shoot us down again, but we're out of there now, and headed to the Philippines. Yeah, they just, you know, the Vietnamese, you know, I guess I could be somewhat sympathetic with them, a little bit, I guess, if to be a good Christian maybe. But, you know, you think of World War II, and, you know, we, the United States, promised Ho Chi Minh and North Vietnamese, the Vietnamese people, because the French had left, you know, they pulled out on World War II, went back to France, left them. Yeah. And of course, we gave them all the equipment and the anti-aircraft guns and all the military support to fight the Japanese, which they did. And we promised them that if they did this, we would guarantee their independence, you know, away from France. Of course, when the war ended, the French came right back, and we didn't do nothing, you know. So you could probably understand why they didn't like us, you know. I mean,
We didn't live up to the agreement.
that's right. And of course, they ended up kicking France's behind and Dien Phu when they defeated the French there. And I personally think that Ho Chi Minh would have been more like Tito was Yugoslavia, you know, a communist, but a middle of the road thing, you know what I mean? Take from both, whatever.
Can we take just a minute? I'm gonna finish off this, this DVD, and then we can put another one in.
You know, we're